Picture a police car parked right next to a massive warehouse wall at night. Its rotating light is flashing across the brickwork over and over. If we use time as our input, how would you actually calculate the distance that beam of light travels across the wall? Here's the wild part about this setup. That distance repeats. But as that light beam rotates and points completely parallel to the wall, the distance it travels seems to just stretch out to infinity. You literally cannot measure that with your standard wavy sine or cosine graphs. It's impossible. This right here is a perfect real-life physics problem that we solve using the tangent function and those invisible barriers we call asymptotes. So, by the time we finish up here, you're going to totally understand the core concepts behind these complex trigonometric graphs. We're going to master the formulas that dictate their transformations, like shifts and stretches, and you'll know exactly how to sketch them out, step by step, using real math examples. All right, let's jump in. Okay, let's get straight into the mechanics. The absolute fundamental rule you need to remember, the one that unlocks literally everything else we're doing today, is that the tangent of x is just the sine of x divided by the cosine of x. That single, simple fraction, it dictates the entire behavior of the tangent graph. Now, why does that fraction matter so much? Well, in math, dividing by 0 is a massive red flag. We just can't do it. So whenever our denominator, which is cosine, equals 0, our graph mathematically breaks. This happens at specific radian measures, like pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. And at these exact spots, we draw what's called a vertical asymptote. Just think of it as this invisible vertical force field that the graph gets super close to, but never ever touches. It's exactly like that police light shining parallel to the wall, reaching for infinity, but never actually hitting the brick. Let's actually look at the numbers to see this infinity concept play out. Watch what happens to the trend here. As our x value creeps closer and closer to pi over 2, which is roughly 1.57 radians, look at the tangent outputs. At 1.5, the output is 14.1. Take a tiny step further to 1.55, and bam, it jumps to 48.1. At 1.56, it explodes to 92.6. The outputs are getting infinitely larger. The graph is literally rocketing upwards at this incredibly steep rate, right alongside that invisible asymptote. Wait, let's hit pause for a quick question, because this is a super common place where students get tripped up. If this graph rockets up forever and plunges down forever on the flip side, does a tangent function have an amplitude? I mean, when we study sine and cosine, we're always looking for a maximum height, right? The crest of the wave. So what's the deal with tangent? The answer is absolutely no. Since there are 0 maximum or minimum values on a tangent graph, we just never use the word amplitude. Instead, when we look at our general equation, we call that leading constant a the stretching or compressing factor. It's telling us how steep the curve is, not how tall it gets. All right, let's make this way easier with a rock-solid 4-step procedure. To graph one period of a basic tangent function, y equals a times the tangent of bx, you just follow these steps. First, identify your stretch. Second, find your period. Third, draw your asymptotes to frame everything out. And fourth, plot your reference points to draw the actual curve. Let's apply this to a real example together, step by step. Let's say we need to graph the function y equals 0.5 times the tangent of pi over 2 times x. Following step 1, our stretching factor, which is the absolute value of a, is exactly 0.5. Moving to step 2, we calculate the period. Now, pay close attention to this part. For tangent, the period formula is simply pi divided by the absolute value of b. In our example, the b value inside those parentheses is pi over 2, so we divide pi by pi over 2. The pi's cancel right out, and that gives us a clean whole number period of 2. Now, since that full period is 2, we just split it right down the middle to find our outer boundaries. That means our asymptotes sit neatly at -1 and +1. Now that we've got a really solid grasp on the basic tangent curve and its asymptotes, let's smoothly transition over to the reciprocal functions secant and cosecant. Secant is simply 1 divided by cosine, and cosecant is 1 divided by sine. And you know what that means, right? Because they have sine and cosine sitting down in the denominator, we're going to be dealing with zero division and those invisible asymptotes all over again. But here's the absolute best trick for graphing these reciprocal functions. You just rely on what you already know. Seriously, lightly sketch your standard sine or cosine wave first, just as a dashed line. Then, wherever that wave crosses the 0 line on the x-axis, you drop in a vertical asymptote for your reciprocal. Once those are in, you just draw these U-shaped curves extending outward from the peaks and valleys of your dashed wave. So where the base cosine graph decreases, your secant graph increases, pulling right away from it. Now, let's tackle a really great question that pops up all the time. You might be sitting there wondering, okay, if we take one of these U-shaped secant functions and shift it vertically up or down, or maybe we stretch it with our a value, is that going to affect the secant's overall range?
Yes, it absolutely does. Remember, there's a massive gap, like a true dead zone, between those upward-facing U-shapes and the downward-facing U-shapes. Your new range adjusts directly based on your stretching factor A and your vertical shift D. So the graph exists everywhere from negative infinity up to negative A plus D. Then it entirely skips that dead zone and picks right back up at positive A plus D, extending all the way up to infinity.
So, when you get a test question asking you to graph a complex, shifted secant function, honestly, do not panic. First, you find your stretch and calculate your phase shift by dividing c by b. Next, you just shift that invisible base cosine wave left or right and up or down based on your d value. Once that foundational skeleton is perfectly in place, boom, drop in your asymptotes at the 0 points and draw your u-curves outward from the peaks and valleys. All right, let's keep this momentum going and move to our final function to see how this reciprocal logic applies to the cotangent. The cotangent is completely defined by the reciprocal identity. It's simply 1 divided by the tangent of x. Visualizing this gives us a really striking result. The main thing you need to lock in here is that wherever your standard tangent graph crosses that 0 mark on the x-axis, your cotangent graph is undefined, which means, you guessed it, it's going to have a vertical asymptote right there. And while the tangent graph is always increasing, curving upwards from left to right, the cotangent graph does the exact opposite. It decreases, continuously sloping downwards. And its vertical asymptotes land perfectly clean at 0, pi, 2 pi, and so on. Before we wrap things up today, let's quickly lock in the critical rules you absolutely must remember. First, do not mix up your period formulas. For tangent and cotangent, the period is pi over b, but for secant and cosecant, it's 2 pi over b. Second rule, never, ever use the word amplitude for any of these 4 graphs. And finally, if you ever find yourself stuck, just look for where your denominator equals 0. That is instantly going to give you the exact locations of your vertical asymptotes. Let's bring this all the way back to that police car from the very beginning. If its rotating light creates a tangent graph across a warehouse wall, what kind of real-world dynamic scenarios might perfectly map onto the infinite U-shapes of a secant or cosecant graph? I want you to ponder that physics problem as you review these formulas today, and keep your eyes peeled for the complex math hiding in the world right around you.